want to talk to you about designer human beings. Have you seen any? In the 1950s and 60s, it was nuclear energy. It's dangerous. People die horrible deaths when it gets loose. So we ought to get rid of it before it liquidates the entire population. Well, that turned out not to be true. Not that nuclear energy never kills, just that its death toll is vanishingly small compared with other accidents. Annual death totals in America: 270,000 people die from walking, probably in the streets. Driving accidents, deaths, 1.35 million. Job-related deaths, 2.3 million. Air pollution, 4.2 million. COVID-19, just over 400,000. No comment. By contrast, nuclear's known total death toll is just over 100 people. And that's over almost 75 years. Of course, it doesn't count Hiroshima or Nagasaki. We're now shocked by the over 400,000 Americans who've died from the flu. Some of that's due to the fact that we have no real idea how many died in the past from the flu. We have some estimates, and those numbers are huge. Way more than what we're dealing with now. We're told, but the experts are telling us all these are just estimates. And that's because we don't report everything a dying patient has going on in their body at death. Only the obvious, the overt, or that which brings them to this point. In some cases, that which will bring more money into the government coffers. Do you know how many people have been diagnosed as dying from COVID? And that was just a contributing issue. They had bad hearts, bad livers, bad everything. They would have died anyway, probably, but this hastened it, so it must be that. In the United States, we're seeing statistics. And the statistics have problems. Michael Shellenberger, an environmental activist of 30 years, tells us that contrary to what we generally hear, nuclear fuel is the safest way to make reliable electricity. You remember 30, 40 years ago we had demonstrators against this nuclear fuel thing? Oh, it's going to kill us? No. Statistics are out. It's safe. In fact, he says nuclear has saved more than 2 million lives to date by preventing the deadly air pollution that shortens the lives of 7 million people every year. It's not the 430,000 COVID, it was 7 million a year from smoke. Nuclear's worst accidents show that the technology has always been safe for the same inherent reason that it has always had such a small environmental impact. Schellenberger says all of this in his article entitled "The High Energy Density of Its Fuel." That's what causes all of this. This is what is the solution in a sense. Professor Klaus Schwab writes about what he calls deep shifts. Now, it's a little interesting note here. There's no mention of anything Schellenberger suggests in any of Schwab's books. It's an earlier book Schwab wrote in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The big changes coming at us are in terms of tipping points, positive outcomes, negative outcomes, unknown outcomes, something he calls outcomes that cut both ways. But initially, we're talking implantable technologies, digital tattoos. Digital tattoos not only look cool, but can perform useful tasks, he writes, like unlocking a car, entering mobile phone codes with a finger point, or tracking body processes, or implementing immunity passports. In what he calls shift number 10, he talks about smart cities. Shift number 11, big data for decisions. Shift 22, designer beings. And that's where it gets interesting. You see, the tipping point for this one will be when the first human whose genome is directly and deliberately edited and that child is born. Oh, wait, that's already happened. China produced what is called a CRISPR baby. It's an acronym, CRISPR. The first human with fully artificial memory implanted in the brain. We're looking at what is called transhumanism, ordered by big data and AI, that will probably, in lieu of any honest debate or public consultation around these shifts, result in a type of social credit system. Who's in favor of all this? The author suggests it's the world's uber rich. Men, women so wealthy, they believe whatever they imagine must be true. No? Well, if they are wrong, they would be uber wealthy. So there. That's how they think. Their enormous material success is obviously due to their belief systems. And if their beliefs are wrong, well, again, they wouldn't be uber rich, would they? All this doesn't specifically call for social credit or an AI-driven authoritarianism. However, that's exactly what its tenets and incentives will produce. It aspires toward transhumanism, and so far all indications are that governments and global elites seem to be buying into it. What it will lead to is something being called the Great Bifurcation, the splitting of our population over whatever new discovery occurs. We're looking at it now in COVID-19. With the world shutting down, there's a significant number of people who see this as a nefarious effort to condition people to do what they're told. You know anybody like that? Why? Well, to preserve life on the planet. And what's more important than that? The third scenario, posited in something called the Jackpot Chronicles, has now come into focus. If the Great Reset comes about, and the author thinks it's already here, it'll lead to a two-tier society where the world's underclass are governed algorithmically via smartphones, digital programmable script, UBI, and well-ordered dopamine hits. Meanwhile, the far smaller populace that actually owns all the assets will globally live in a parallel universe where they retain agency, freedom of movement, diet, and thought. Now, of course, that's all smoke and mirrors. These common folk are being influenced, encouraged, and guided into a world our minders are providing. Anybody got a Bible? Earliest editions are just shy of 2,000 years of age. It says the same thing in a different way.